My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I'm 34 years old. Until last winter, I believed my marriage was the safest part of my life. My husband, Ethan, and I had been married for 6 years. We lived in a small blue house outside Columbus, Ohio, with a white porch swing that Ethan promised to repaint every summer and never did. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was ours. I worked as a receptionist at a dental office, and Ethan managed a hardware store 10 minutes from home. We paid our bills on time, bought groceries every Sunday, argued about little things like whose turn it was to take out the trash, and ended most nights on the couch watching old crime shows with takeout containers balanced on our knees. From the outside, we looked like a normal American couple. Maybe we were, but I've learned that sometimes the most painful secrets grow inside the most ordinary lives. It started with a grocery list. I was standing in our kitchen one cold Thursday evening, writing down milk, eggs, coffee, and Ethan's favorite cereal when I opened the little ceramic jar where I kept extra cash for groceries. I always kept a few $100s there, in case one of us needed to stop by the store during the week. There should have been at least $300 inside. There was $80. At first, I thought I had made a mistake. Maybe I'd used some of it for gas or picked up a birthday gift for my niece and forgotten. I even stood there counting it twice, as if the missing money might somehow appear if I looked hard enough. When Ethan came home, he dropped his keys into the bowl by the door and kissed my cheek like always. "You okay?" he asked, loosening his tie. "You look stressed." I held up the jar. "Did you take money from here?" He barely looked at it. "Yeah, a little." "A little?" I tried to laugh, but it came out tighter than I meant. "Almost all of it is gone." He shrugged and opened the fridge. "I needed cash for something at work. I was going to put it back." "What kind of thing?" He pulled out a bottle of water without turning around. "Just something temporary. It's not a big deal, Lauren." Not a big deal. That should have been the end of it. Married people borrow money from each other. Married people forget to mention things. Married people have messy weeks and unexpected expenses. But something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. He didn't look at me when he answered. He didn't explain. And Ethan had always been the kind of man who explained everything. If he spent $20 on a new flashlight, he'd tell me why the old one stopped working. If he bought lunch instead of packing leftovers, he'd mention it before I even asked. That was who he was. Careful, predictable, open. Or at least I thought it was. Over the next 2 weeks, little things started piling up like dirty dishes in a sink. Ethan began taking his phone with him everywhere. To the bathroom, to the garage, even to the laundry room downstairs. One night, I reached for it by accident when it buzzed on the coffee table, thinking it might be his brother, and Ethan snatched it so fast that I actually jumped. "Who was that?" I asked. "No one." I stared at him. "No one texted you?" He rubbed his face with one hand. "I mean, no one important, just work." He smiled after he said it, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then there were the late nights. At first, it was one excuse after another. Inventory at the store, a truck delivery running late, a coworker who needed help closing. Ethan had always been responsible, so I wanted to believe him. I did believe him. At least I tried to. But one Tuesday night, I called the store around 8:30 because I wanted to ask if he could pick up cold medicine on his way home. A young employee answered. "Hi," I said. "Is Ethan still there?" There was a short pause. No, ma'am. Ethan left around 6. I thanked him and hung up, staring at my own reflection in the dark kitchen window. When Ethan finally walked through the front door at almost 10, he smelled like winter air and peppermint gum. "How was inventory?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. He froze for half a second. Just half a second, but long enough. "Tiring," he said. "Why?" No reason. I wanted to confront him right then. I wanted to ask where he had really been, why he was lying, and why I suddenly felt like a stranger in my own marriage. But fear can make you quiet in ways pride never could. So instead, I smiled, took the cold medicine from the bag in his hand, and said nothing. That weekend, Ethan fell asleep on the couch during a football game. His phone was in his hand, loose against his leg. The screen lit up with a message before it dimmed again. I wasn't trying to spy. At least, that's what I told myself. But I looked, and all I saw before the screen locked was one sentence. "Thank you for helping this month. I swear I'll pay you back." Rachel, his ex-wife. I felt like the room tilted under me. Ethan had told me about Rachel when we were dating. They had been married young, divorced after 3 years, and according to him, they barely spoke anymore. "That part of my life is over," he once told me while we were folding laundry in our first apartment. "I don't carry old relationships into new ones." I believed him because I loved him, maybe because I wanted to. Now my hands were shaking so hard I had to set my tea mug down before I dropped it. "Helping this month. Pay you back." I looked at Ethan sleeping peacefully under the soft glow of the television, one arm over his eyes, like he had nothing in the world to hide. And for the first time in 6 years, I asked myself a question I never thought I'd have to ask. What exactly had my husband been doing behind my back? I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside him in the dark, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing, while my mind kept circling the same name over and over. Rachel. By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, even if it broke my heart. The next morning, Ethan left for work like nothing had changed. He kissed my forehead while I stood at the kitchen counter pretending to stir sugar into my coffee. "See you tonight," he said. I forced a smile. "Have a good day." The front door closed behind him, and I stayed frozen in place until I heard his truck pull out of the driveway. Then I moved. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my coffee mug into the sink. I hated what I was about to do. I hated the sneaking, the suspicion, the feeling that I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. But Ethan had already crossed a line the moment he started lying to me. I was just trying to catch up to the truth. We shared a laptop in the small office near the laundry room. Ethan mostly used it to pay bills and order things for the house. He wasn't careless exactly, but he had always been trusting with me. His email stayed logged in. Our online bank account was saved in the browser. I sat down in the chair and stared at the screen for a long moment, almost hoping I would lose my nerve. Instead, I opened the bank account. At first, nothing looked strange. Mortgage payment, electric bill, grocery store, gas station, my dental insurance, Ethan's truck payment, normal things, ordinary things, the kind of life I thought we had. Then I saw it. A transfer for $1,200 3 weeks earlier. No note, no explanation, just a name attached to the account it had been sent to. Rachel Carter. I stopped breathing for a second. I clicked on the transaction history and scrolled farther down. Another transfer. $1,200 the month before. Another one. $1,150 2 months before that. Then $900. Then $1,000. Then $1,200 again. My stomach turned so fast I had to grip the edge of the desk. He hadn't helped her once. He had been sending his ex-wife money for 6 months. I sat there in the silence of our house, staring at those numbers until they blurred together. I started doing the math in my head without meaning to. Thousands of dollars. Our money. The money we had been trying to save for a new roof. The money I had skipped lunches for, clipped coupons for, and tucked into that ceramic grocery jar like it mattered. I remembered Ethan telling me in March that we needed to be careful with spending. I remembered him saying, maybe we should wait another year before taking our trip to Maine. I remembered him telling me not to buy the dining table I loved, because this just isn't the right time financially. All those careful conversations, all those little sacrifices, and all along, he was paying another woman's rent. His ex-wife's rent. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally opened his email. I wasn't even thinking clearly anymore. I just needed to understand how deep this lie went. There were dozens of normal messages, work schedules, store promotions, a reminder from the dentist. Then I searched her name. Rachel. 6 emails appeared. The first one was from 7 months ago. Ethan, I'm sorry to ask you this, but I have nowhere else to go. If I miss one more payment, my landlord says he'll evict me. Please don't tell Lauren I don't want to cause problems in your marriage. I just need a little time to get back on my feet. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I clicked the next one. Thank you for helping. I know I don't deserve your kindness after everything. I promise this is temporary. Then another. I'm still trying to find a second job. Please don't give up on me yet. And Ethan's replies. Short, careful, private. I'll send it tonight. Don't worry about paying me back right now. Lauren doesn't know. I'll handle it. Lauren doesn't know. I'll handle it. I read that line 3 times. Not we'll talk about it. Not I need to tell my wife. Not this feels wrong. Just. Lauren doesn't know. As if I were a problem to manage. A person to keep in the dark so he could continue playing hero in someone else's life. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. If I started crying, I was afraid I wouldn't stop. I closed the laptop and pressed both palms against my face, breathing hard. The room felt too small. The house felt different somehow, like the walls themselves had been listening to secrets I didn't know. Part of me wanted to call Ethan right then and scream into the phone until he came home. Another part wanted to pack a bag, drive to my sister's house, and leave divorce papers on the kitchen table. But under all that anger was something even worse. Humiliation. Because while Ethan was protecting Rachel, I had been protecting him. I had defended his late nights in my own head. I had explained away his distance. I had blamed stress, work, money, anything except the truth. By the time I heard his truck in the driveway that evening, I had spent the whole day walking around in a daze, replaying every lie. I was standing in the kitchen when he came in, carrying a paper bag from the pharmacy and smiling like a man coming home to peace. "Hey," he said, "I picked up your vitamins. You said you were almost out." For one strange second, that nearly broke me more than the lies. Because that was Ethan, the man who remembered my vitamins, the man who warmed up my car in winter, the man who used to hold my hand in line at the grocery store. And somehow, he was also the man who had looked me in the eyes for 6 months and lied without shaking. I set the bank printouts on the kitchen table between us. His smile disappeared. "What's this?" he asked quietly. I folded my arms to stop them from trembling. "You tell me." His eyes dropped to the first page. I watched the color drain from his face. "Lauren." "No." My voice came out sharper than I expected. "Don't say my name like I'm overreacting. Don't stand there and act confused. I know about the money, Ethan." He looked at me, then back at the papers. And in that terrible silence, I knew one thing for sure. My husband had never planned to tell me. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not ever. Ethan stood at the kitchen table with the bank statements in his hand, staring at them like they might somehow change if he looked long enough. I had imagined this moment all day. In some versions, he denied everything. In others, he got angry and accused me of invading his privacy. But the man standing in front of me looked neither defensive nor shocked. He looked guilty, and somehow that hurt the most. "How long have you known?" he asked finally. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Long enough." "Lauren, I can explain." I felt something inside me snap. "Then explain," I said, louder than I meant to. "Because I've spent the whole day trying to understand why my husband has been secretly sending his ex-wife our money for 6 months. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Say something," I whispered. "Please." Because right now, I feel like I'm standing in my own kitchen with a stranger. He pulled out a chair but didn't sit. Rachel lost her job in January. I stared at him. "So?" "She was already behind on rent. Then she got sick. She had pneumonia and missed more work. By the time she recovered, she was so far behind that her landlord gave her a final notice." "And that became your responsibility?" I shot back. "No," he said quickly. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Ethan? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that." He rubbed both hands over his face, exhausted. "She called me one night. She was crying. She said she didn't know who else to ask." I folded my arms tighter across my chest. "And you didn't think maybe your wife should know before you started paying another woman's rent?" His jaw tightened. "I knew how it would look." I stared at him in disbelief. "You knew how it would look, so you lied?" "I was trying to avoid hurting you." That almost made me laugh again. "You weren't trying to avoid hurting me," I said quietly. "You were trying to avoid dealing with me." He flinched. The kitchen went silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock over the stove. I hated how normal everything sounded, how ordinary the house still looked, while my marriage felt like it was splitting open in front of me. "Why Rachel?" I asked after a moment. "Out of all the people in the world, why was she still someone you had to save?" He sat down heavily in the chair and stared at the table. For the first time since I met him, Ethan looked older than 37, tired, ashamed. "Because I owe her," he said. The words landed like a slap. "You owe her?" I repeated. He nodded once, still not looking at me. "When Rachel and I were married, I was a mess. I was working all the time, drinking too much, never home. I wasn't cheating, but I might as well have been. I gave that marriage almost nothing. She carried me through some of the worst years of my life, Lauren. And when it ended, I walked away feeling like I had broken something I never repaired." I felt my throat tighten, but not with sympathy. "So this is guilt?" I asked. "You've been using our marriage to pay off your guilt?" "No." He looked up at me then, eyes red around the edges. "That's not what this was." "Then tell me what it was." He swallowed hard. "Rachel said she was scared. She said if she got evicted, she'd have nowhere to go. And I remembered what it felt like when she used to beg me to care about things before they fell apart. I thought if I could help her just this once, maybe I could finally do one decent thing." I stared at him, trying to process the twisted logic of it. One decent thing. One decent thing, repeated month after month, hidden from his wife, draining our savings while I clipped coupons and postponed vacations. "Did you ever love her again?" I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop it. Ethan's whole body stiffened. "What?" "Did you ever want her back?" My voice shook now, and I hated that he could hear it. "Was this about rent, or was this about you keeping a door open to your old life?" "No." He stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "No, Lauren. I swear to you, it was never that." "Then why keep choosing her over me?" His face crumpled for a second, and I could see the answer before he said it. "Because I was afraid," he whispered. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid you'd tell me no." I just looked at him. He took a shaky breath. "I knew if I told you the truth, you'd be hurt. You'd ask questions I didn't want to answer. You'd tell me this crossed a line, and maybe you'd be right. But Rachel was desperate, and I kept telling myself it would only be 1 month, then another, then another. And after a while, the lie got too big to confess." I felt tears gathering, hot and angry. "So you decided for both of us," I said. "You decided that your ex-wife's emergency mattered more than your wife's trust. That's not fair." "Fair?" I stepped closer to him, my voice rising. "Do you want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me the truth before you emptied our savings into someone else's rent. Fair would have been treating me like your partner, instead of some obstacle standing between you and your ex." "She wasn't my ex in that moment," he snapped, then immediately regretted it. The room went dead still. He closed his eyes. "That's not what I meant." But it was too late. The damage was already done. I felt all the air leave my lungs in one slow, painful breath. "Maybe that's exactly what you meant." "Lauren." No. I grabbed my car keys from a counter. My hands were trembling so badly they almost slipped from my fingers. I can't do this right now. He moved toward me. Please don't leave. I backed away before he could touch me. I need space before I say something I can't take back. Where are you going? I looked at the man I had loved for 6 years, the man who still knew which vitamins I took and how I liked my coffee, the man who had shattered my trust one quiet lie at a time. I don't know, I said honestly. I just know I can't stay here tonight. And as I walked out the front door into the freezing dark, I realized something that scared me even more than Ethan's lies. I wasn't leaving because of Rachel. I was leaving because I no longer knew if my husband was the kind of man I could come home to. I drove to my sister Megan's house with tears blurring the road in front of me. She opened the door before I even knocked twice. One look at my face, and she pulled me inside without asking questions. Megan had always been like that. Practical, calm, the kind of older sister who could sense a disaster before you had the words to explain it. "What happened?" she asked softly, after she sat me at her kitchen table with a mug of tea. And then I told her everything. The money, the emails, Rachel, Ethan's guilt, his lies. Megan listened without interrupting, but I could see the anger building in her eyes. When I finally finished, my throat felt raw and my whole body ached with exhaustion. "He lied to you for 6 months," she said flatly. "I know." "He used your savings to support his ex-wife." "I know." "And then he admitted he hid it because he knew you'd say no." That one hurt all over again. I stared down at the tea I hadn't touched. Megan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Lauren, this isn't about money anymore." "I know that too." It was about trust. It was about the feeling that my husband had quietly built a second emotional life behind my back and expected me never to notice. It was about every time I had smiled and said, "We'll be okay," while he already knew our money was going somewhere else. I slept in Megan's guest room that night, but I barely slept at all. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls and 6 texts from Ethan. "Please talk to me. I know I don't deserve it, but please let me explain better." "I'm sorry." "I ended it with Rachel. She won't ask me for anything again." "I love you. Please come home." I read the messages over and over, but they didn't make me feel better. "I ended it with Rachel" sounded less like comfort and more like proof that there had been something to end. By noon, I still hadn't answered. I was sitting on Megan's back porch, wrapped in one of her old blankets, when my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Ethan. It was Rachel. I stared at her name on the screen, my stomach twisting. For a second, I almost let it go to voicemail. But some stubborn part of me needed to hear her voice, needed to know what kind of woman had become such a quiet shadow inside my marriage. I answered, "Lauren." Her voice was thin and nervous. "I know you probably hate me, and maybe I deserve that, but I needed to call." I said nothing. She took a shaky breath. "Ethan told me you found out." "I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" I asked coldly. "For asking my husband for money or for helping him lie to me?" There was silence on the other end. "Both," she said finally. I closed my eyes. I never wanted this to happen. I was desperate, and I took the easy way out. I knew it was wrong. I knew he should tell you. I should have said no, but I was scared and embarrassed and drowning. That doesn't excuse it. No, I said, it doesn't. She didn't argue. Then she said something I didn't expect. For what it's worth, Ethan never gave me a reason to think he wanted me back. I gripped the phone tighter. He talked about you all the time, Rachel continued quietly, about how kind you are, how organized you are, how you make your house feel like home. He loves you, Lauren. I'm not saying that to protect him. I'm saying it because I think he's a coward, not because he stopped loving you, but because he was too weak to be honest with the person he loved most. Those words settled over me in a strange, painful way. A coward, not a man in love with his ex, not a husband secretly planning another life, just a man who had made a selfish, cowardly choice and kept making it because telling the truth got harder every month. That didn't erase the damage, but it changed the shape of it. When I finally drove home that evening, the house looked exactly the same as it had 2 days earlier. The blue siding, the porch swing, Ethan's work boots by the front door. But inside, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table with a folder in front of him, his eyes hollow from lack of sleep. I didn't know if you'd come back, he said as I stepped inside. I almost didn't. He nodded like he deserved that. I stayed standing. Say what you need to say. He pushed the folder toward me. Inside were printed bank statements, a written budget, and a cashier's check made out to our savings account for almost $4,000. I emptied the account my dad left me after he died, Ethan said. It's not everything yet, but it's most of it. The rest will go back over the next 2 paychecks. I called Rachel this morning and told her I can't be involved in her life anymore. I blocked her number. And I told her if she needs help, she has to find it somewhere that doesn't destroy my marriage. I looked at the check but didn't touch it. That's a start, I said. It's not enough, I know that. No, it isn't. He swallowed hard. I'll do counseling, marriage counseling, individual counseling, whatever you want. I'll hand you every password I have. I'll answer every question, no matter how ugly it makes me look. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm asking for a chance to earn back what I broke. For the first time since I'd found out, Ethan's voice didn't sound defensive. It sounded broken. And I realized I still loved him. That was the hardest part of all. Love would have made it easier if he had stopped loving me, if he had chosen Rachel, if he had packed a bag and walked out. But he hadn't. He had stayed, lied, hidden, and hurt me anyway. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said. His eyes filled with tears. I know. I don't know if I can look at you without hearing you say, Lauren doesn't know. I'll handle it. He lowered his head. I know. I took a slow breath. Then listen carefully, Ethan. If I stay, this marriage does not go back to normal. There are no more secrets, no more private rescues, no more deciding what I can handle. If another woman from your past calls you crying, you tell me before you answer. If you lie to me again, about anything, we are done. Not almost done. Done. He nodded immediately. Okay. And counseling starts this week. Okay. I studied his face for a long moment. This man had been my home for 6 years. He had also been the source of the deepest betrayal I had ever felt. Both things were true at the same time. "I'm not staying because this was small," I said quietly. "I'm staying because I need to know whether what we had is still worth saving. But if I ever feel second place in my own marriage again, I will leave." A tear slid down Ethan's face. "You won't be second place again." I wanted to believe him, but trust doesn't return in one conversation. It doesn't come back because someone cries or apologizes or pays back the money. Trust comes back slowly, if it comes back at all, in ordinary moments. When phones are left face up, when questions get honest answers, when actions finally match promises. That night, I slept in the guest room. The night after that, too. Healing did not happen all at once. Some days I looked at Ethan and saw the man I married. Other days I looked at him and saw the lie. We started counseling. We had ugly conversations and quiet ones. We rebuilt piece by piece, like people trying to save a house after a storm. And maybe that's the lesson I learned from all of it. A marriage doesn't only break when love disappears. Sometimes it breaks when honesty does. My husband thought he was protecting someone from pain, but secrets don't protect a marriage. They poison it. And the cruelest part is that they do it slowly, quietly, while everything still looks normal from the outside. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and this is the story of how I learned that being loved is not enough if you are not also respected. And if I could leave you with one truth, it would be this: never ignore the moment you start feeling alone beside the person who promised to stand beside you. Because love can survive hard times. But without trust, it can't breathe.